This week on the Squatchers Lounge podcast, David and the Reverend Jeff take on one of the most epic Bigfoot encounters of all time. We're taking it way back, all the way back to the Albert Ostman story. Yeah, captured by Bigfoot. We had to go there. This is one of those stories that's always on the back of your mind when you're out there. Don't lie. And as always, we have some delicious news hot off the press. And now I turn it over to my host, the Papa Squatch of the Lounge, the Reverend Jeff Kelly.
Oh, yeah, Squatchers. We're starting off Season 3 just the way we wanted to. This week, we got nothing but good news, and even more good news. Last week was the poo-poo podcast. Not this week, folks. We got all kind of goodness coming your way tonight. And with me, as always, the best and greatest podcast announcer in Squatchers Lounge podcast history, the Father David Batdorf. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great. Doing actually. I'm really looking forward to this topic because this Albert Ostman story, oh man, that is like it opens up so many questions. It always has for me, and yeah, whether people poo-poo that or not, it's a good beginning point for some really, really crazy questions about Sam.
It does, for sure, and we are definitely 100% going to get into that. But at the top of the news hour, like we always do, it is time for us to talk about some newsy stuff. And the first thing I want to talk about was, dude, Discovery News just on the January 12th come out with a California condor, baby, that nobody has seen before. That means these things are flying off and roosting far enough away for the researchers to no longer be able to find them, making nests, breeding, and bringing their babies back to where the good food sources are. That, to me, my friend, says amazing things about a flock of condors that they thought was going to die off 50 years ago.
A lot of conservation has gone into the condor concern. I just, this is good news, but hopefully, this sort of news will continue, because that's something that's going to be cryptid status pretty soon if we don't take care of business with the conservation on the wild California condors.
Right. What the condor basically is a gigantic turkey vulture. I mean, I've never seen one in the wild myself, but I'm looking at a picture of it here, and it's definitely a bird of prey or a bird of scavenge. It looks like a turkey vulture. But, just to say that they're breeding on their own and coming back again is fantastic, because, anything under 2,500 is endangered. And, right now we've got a flock of 116 in the wild, so that's a long way from coming back 100%. But to find a brand new baby, that, my friend, is pretty cool.
I feel like 116 is almost 200% from like 10 years ago. So we're going in the right direction, but this species has got a long... It's the closest thing we have to the thunderbird for sure right now. I mean, this is one of the largest avian creatures on the planet, and definitely all we got to do is throw some dead.
Yes, it's the largest flying bird on the planet.
Amazing creatures, and this juvenile has this kind of black head, but the other one, the adult males have a very, very distinct coloration and everything, and they're amazing creatures, and this makes me happy to see.
For sure. Now, the Bluff Creek Project, the winter update. That's right. They went out and picked up the cameras in January. And what they got? They got all kind of cool stuff. But the biggest thing that they got was the ring-tailed cat. Now, what they're calling it a cat, it's not really even a cat. It's not related to a cat. It's actually related to the raccoon family. And people have been saying that they've been seeing them for years around California, but California says they died out here a long time ago. Justice Mayhat told me that they had ring-tailed primates up on the Sacramento River, and I told him there's no such thing as ring-tailed primates on the Sacramento River. However, while we were fishing out there last year, sure enough, there was a ring-tailed cat. So, it looked like a ring-tailed lemur, and to a lot of people they do. So, it was just an honest mistake. He didn't know what to call it. It was ring-tail. He says ring-tail. I said, the monkey part. So it wasn't even his fault. It was mine for being the ignorant of not knowing what they were. But the winter highlights video is up at the Bluff Creek Project YouTube channel.
Yeah, some impressive wildlife, and just you were saying earlier that their image of the ring-tailed cat has made some pretty good news so far.
Yeah, it was actually on ABC tonight. I think in their local area, at least, is starting to hit. There it is, right there. There's the ring-tailed cat.
Yep.
Hey, let me go back and get that footage for you again. That's the rare footage of the. There it is. There's the ring-tailed cat right there on the Reconyx camera. Down there at Bluff Creek. That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, you can see how it could be. I mean, the limbs aren't long enough to be a lemur, but like as something's running across in front of you, you could imagine that like.
And you usually encounter them at night because they're nocturnal, so you really don't see that they don't have long arms.
Big ringed tail, you could be very, very confused, like as your flashlight crosses over it or whatnot. But this is an animal that's only known to be in Central and South America, and so this is a cryptid find, geographically, this is a cryptid find for them, and that's really exciting. And that, there could be studies that start from this photo because the Department of, Resources, wildlife, like this is a huge.
They'll follow up on something like this, absolutely.
Well, like you said, you and Justin had the experience of seeing one. Now that's something that's really, I mean, this is concrete and this is tangible and this is exactly what this creature is. That's what we're hoping for on a game camera, and then scientists will come through and study, ecologically, why are they here? Why did they come back north? If they weren't here, or were they here all along? What are they doing? Why?
And if there's one, you can guarantee there's a breeding population in this area, whether it be far or wide. There's still at least enough to be reproducing. This is not somebody who moved, 1,000 miles in here and is just passing through.
Exactly, and so, but this is exactly what we're hoping for with the Sasquatch question, is that somebody's going to have these resources, put this stuff out there, and just keep it out there and keep refreshing it, and they're going to get something exciting. I mean, this is we're all hyper focused on the Sasquatch thing, obviously, but to a non-Sasquatch person, this is as novel and as exciting as Sasquatch on a scientific level.
Absolutely. It's exciting to a lot of people. It's already hitting the news, so that's hoping that's turning a good eye towards the project. If you want to know more about it, you can find us over at facebook.com/The Bluff Creek Project. Just Bluff Creek Project there. You can sign up for the fan page and get all the notifications, and there it is, Channel 3 NBC there up in Humboldt County is already playing the footage of the rare lemur. So, yay for those guys, and congratulations. Keep up the good work, and I can't wait till we get our trip coming up there in June, mid-June of this year.
I'm going to apprehend one and take it home with me and domesticate it.
Exactly. All right, now let's go ahead and get this out of the way here now. David sends me this article from one of our favorite non-real websites, the Ancient Origins, where all of a sudden they found some Triceratops bones that were only 33,500 years ago. Well, are humans walking the earth with dinosaurs after all?
Well, technically, yes, because there are some relic dinosaurs left in our avian species, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so fine. All technicalities aside, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that this ancientorigins.net is not some place to get your news, because they're taking quotes from a Mr., not Dr., Hugh Miller, a research and consulting chemist and head of the Paleochronology Group. Not
Dr. Mister.
Yeah, and not paleontology group of yada 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 or of this.
Their paleontology group.
Yeah, the only thing I was like the paleochronology group. The only thing I could find with a quick Google search on that was a Facebook page. So anyway, they are doing carbon-14 dating on as many dinosaur bones as they can get, which is phenomenal. It's giving them these crazy, like between 22 and 39,000 years before present, which is crazy. Because most
people are hanging out with the Sumerians.
Yeah, most people understand that the Triceratops went extinct about 65 million years. Million years ago.
Million years ago, man.
Billions and billions of years ago. No, so quadrillions of years ago. It doesn't even matter. Like the Earth didn't exist. Not even a new Earth. But so basically what this guy is saying is that these dinosaur bones, because they're taking the
Carbon-14 dates.
Carbon-14 dates, the C-14 dates, which we don't use. We use these radiocarbon datings because they're more reliable and they're the carbon-14 datings give you these very much more contemporary dates all the time, and every other kind of dating, you know, whether it's geological dating and or the radiological dating and like the other carbon dating that we do, the C-14 dating always gives this really weird thing that doesn't jive with everything else.
Kind of like Crazy Ketchum's DNA, where it's always total human on one side of it.
Pretty much, you know, like it's always the same thing. But anyway, this gentleman, who definitely is with the New Earth creationist movement and trying to propel his own agenda, has set forth all of this testing, and it challenges everything that science has ever known. And why do people give him these bits and pieces of dinosaurs when there's other people that can do it? It just drives me insane. Don't give the dinosaurs to this guy. If some guy named Hugh, Mr. Hugh, comes up to you and says, "Hey, so
can I test your bones?
Yeah, can I test your dinosaur bones?" You say, which university do you work for, and which publication are you trying to to present this data in? And he'd be like, "Well, New Earth creationists, no,
Noble Central."
You have a foregone conclusion before you got to this piece of bone, so that's not science. Bye-bye.
Sayonara. All right, well, let's move on to the next sucker here. Orangutans learn to produce human-like sounds. Oh, my God. The orangutans, they're learning to speak on us, David. What are we going to do? So I'm sitting here the other day working, and David sends me this article, and he says, "Hey, look, orangutans learn to speak human-like." I'm like, yeah, so did my parrot when he sat in my house and listened to me talk. What's the big deal? And he kind of chuckled. He says, "Oh yeah, okay, that's true." So tell us about this, David. This is I thought the article was kind of cool.
No, this is a really and there's larger implications that I find really interesting, and it doesn't have to do with just primates. It has to do with primates, cetaceans, avian species, and all these other things we have this same sort of capacity for speech or simple language, whether they speak our language or not. But this particular orangutan, like orangutans don't make human sounds because they didn't grow up like this particular orangutan. Somewhere between the age of 2 years old and 10 years old, there's no documentation of where this orangutan was, but it does a lot of human-like things. Likely was trained for entertainment or something as such. So grew up with probably a lot of commands, vocal commands, visual cues and other things, but grew up very much human from the age of 2 to 10. If you think of primates, they grow up quicker than we do, but there's still that same amount of time of like the cerebral growth. And if they have that capacity for language, this is the perfect time for them to kind of learn to mimic that. Versus, like, if you get an old parrot who's lived in the wild, it's probably not going to say, "Polly want a cracker."
Right.
If you get a parrot young enough to be influenced and have that part of its brain influenced and stimulated, then it's probably going to say, "Polly want a cracker."
More like what's in the bag, bitch, or whatever he hears regularly.
What's in the bag?
Right.
So this is a fantastic case. Something that you wish you could study more, but you'd have to go back in time and really look at that. 18 months to 3 or 4 years old period of time where they're the most susceptible to that sort of thing. Same thing. I was talking about the bonobo Kanzi. Kanzi's my homeboy.
Cheesy tomato bread boy.
Tomato bread boy. He's able to kind of conduct himself through these glyphs. He can't vocalize like a person. He doesn't have the apparatus. The orangutan apparently has come close, if you will, but because he didn't have these glyphs that he could work with to do that. But it was from a very young age, from birth, exposed to this. So, or not from birth, he was about 4 years old. But so from a very early age, exposed to this means of communication. So his son Takeo is probably the best case study for this, because from birth, Takeo is growing up part in bonobo culture, in captive, of course, and part human culture, in captive, of course. So that's going to be an interesting study to follow, and we'll probably follow up on some of this stuff. They think that there's a potential that through that growth period that Takeo could make human-like sounds.
That'd be very, very cool.
It would be
All right.
insane.
All right, well, then right after that one comes up, boy, this one really kind of shocked me. I get all these people, oh my goodness, chimpanzees use drum solos to tell other primates who and where they are, just like Sasquatches do.
This proves tree knocking.
This proves tree knocks. Well, yeah, no, not exactly. They do stand on the tree roots, and they do bang their feet, and they do have a particular cadence for each animal to identify itself. Neat. Very, very cool, because this is behaviors that we're learning in the wild chimps that we've never seen in the captive chimps.
Because the captive chimps don't have that
tree roots to do it, right?
Tree roots to do it, or that same culture. And that's the thing. Like, learning is a cultural thing. Like we're talking about, this human sort of utterance producing orangutan. It's definitely in nurture, not nature. Nature gives them a lot of instincts and a lot of other things, but that the environment in which they grow up and that culture in which they grow up allows them to do these things. Some chimpanzees may do this drumming to let people know where they are at distance, and others may not. It's a very fascinating thing, but the first time it's been observed, and yes, everybody, it could be a good thing to say that, okay, one other species aside from us does long-range communication by beating on trees.
Dude, I just keep getting this sight in my head that I can't get out of it, of the movie George in the Jungle with Brendan Fraser, Monkeygram. Sorry. Lost my mind there for a moment.
It happens. The only reason that I think that the tree knocking or this tree thumping thing could be good, because basically the way that sound waves work, especially in a hot, humid environment, is they don't travel very far at the ground level. But if you were able to resonate something up a tree, and it would kind of like arc down as the the volume of the hit would arc down, and it could be louder for longer doing it that way. But that's on a flat plane for A, and for B it's in a hot, humid environment.
Well, now the secret will be subsonic communication, lower than the human hear frequencies, so that the stomping in the ground is subwaving.
And they can sense it through their feet. They're gonna have organs on their feet that can sense that.
You're going to get these vibrations picked up. And that's how we're going to find this at Sasquatch. Well, one of the last pieces of news we wanted to get to tonight was the quadcopter footage, and thank goodness for Phil, a para breakdown. Yeah, it's the same carpet squatch as we usually have going on here. He's got a wonderful blow up of it. You can check it out. This is the one where the quadcopter flies up over the house and flies back, perfectly framed up for the carpet squatch to come walking out.
If anybody's ever used a video drone, like free form, like actually flying it, you would know how impossible the shot that they got would be unless you had planned it in advance. Let's just say.
Right, unless you're like just flying a sortie, you've got the GPS coordinates set up and your drone just goes out and flies a pattern, the same pattern all the time, and you're just collecting data over those points that it's flying past all the time, then you might score something like this. But just in a random drone flight, please.
Well, something like this, something that maybe enough people have watched this by now. It's got 50. Is that 50 or 67 thumbs up? Which the comment that Phil made, which I really appreciated, was, okay, it's the same old carpet bad costume, gorilla costume that we've seen time and time again. But it's cool because it's with the drone.
Because it's a quadcopter, man. It's the latest type of hoax. Everybody got one for Christmas.
Yeah, it's the most technologically advanced hoax of all time.
They all got one for Christmas with high definition technologies, and this is what we're gonna be stuck with. Holy friggin' crap! Well, we got one last update for us to go ahead and finish this out. So let's go ahead and talk about this one, David.
And now, the latest from Muppet Gate 2014. We attempt to bring you the latest from the phenomena, straight down to the do-do-do-do-do phenomena.
So, yeah, here it is, 68 hours to go. Bigfoot North, Todd Standing's bid for $900,000 Canadian reached 1,509 Canadian dollars, which is like 85 American, right? I'm sure I got the conversion a little wrong there somewhere, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, what he didn't count on actually is that the Canadian dollar dropped considerably. I think yesterday or something like that. So he would have been out like hundreds of thousands of dollars anyway.
Right, he would have definitely taken a big hit for it. Well, Todd Standing did take a huge flying crap on the community and said, I'm done. No one's going to give me any money, so I'm just going to move on. I don't know what's going to happen to Bigfoot North, but I'm going to take all the websites down. Well, apparently he didn't take this one down, and that was several weeks ago that we reported on that, and here it is. I guess they're just going to let it ride out, but apparently it is going to fail. And we'll take a victory on that one because we got ahead of it before it got out of hand. Could you imagine if we were battling this thing and it had like $890,000 on it right now?
Yeah, that wasn't going to happen.
Well, you never know. I mean, if we really didn't bring the truth out from the very beginning of it, and just let it ignore it like some people kept, why are you talking about him at all? He's such a hoaxer. Don't give a hoaxer anything. We're not giving a hoaxer anything but the bad press that they deserve. But here it is several weeks later, and, Dr. Meldrum still hasn't said anything about the project. Hasn't said anything about Todd Standing. Hasn't said anything about his colleague leaving the field. Did he have a breakdown? It's just, on to the next project with cash.
No comment.
Yeah, well, there isn't really any comment to really be had there.
Say after that, it's like, and period, end of sentence, done.
Right, exactly. It's like, and you're right. So let's just leave it at that. For once the good guy wins, and we don't have to say that. Oh, no, we're gonna have to deal with the douche for another year. But the only thing that he was bringing new to the table was this devil footage that impressed Dr. Meldrum so much to go out into the field with him, and whatever Dr. Meldrum's experience was without it being recorded, because they don't have any proof that happened. Dr. Meldrum doesn't have any more proof of his Bigfoot encounter than Justin Smeha has of his. Plain and simple. That's the facts of the case. What do you think, David?
I think that's absolutely the truth. It's a story. It might have happened, but there's no way of substantiating that. And for people to latch on to that any more than anybody else's story.
That's exactly it. If you're going to ask me to believe Dr. Meldrum's story, well, then I got to believe a whole bunch of other people's story because they don't have any proof of theirs either. The only proof that we have that it happened is Dr. Meldrum's credible doctor person, which we've all called into question with him working with a known hoaxer, and the known hoaxer who was there when it happened. Those are the only two people that were involved in Dr. Meldrum's sighting, other than if there was somebody in a costume that was hoaxing Meldrum through his night vision.
The only thing that could make that interesting for me is if, in a documentary setting, which we'll never see, unfortunately, I don't think, is if Dr. Meldrum would show us what he's learned from, like, the Mayanzinskis and these other wildlife biologists that he's been hanging out with. When he thinks he sees something pass from here to here, how to document that and to look for data and to go through and where, obviously something large passed through here. What was it? And to go through that process with Dr. Meldrum would have been interesting to me. But I will never see that. I don't know if it's because it didn't happen or because it wasn't interesting enough to film from whatever film company, whether it's Todd's or not, was filming things at that point.
Right. Well, the night vision that they had didn't have the recording function on it at that point, and it was either like during or right after that Todd caught up with them and was filming Dr. Meldrum, either right after the experience or during the experience. I didn't go to the summit. I couldn't stomach going to the summit with Todd Standing being there, knowing that all this was just a farce to begin with, and he wrapped so many people. This was as bad as if Daisy in the Box had gone to its conclusion. This is what Daisy in the Box would have been had it gone to its conclusion. And for you new people that don't know what Daisy in the Box is, go back in our archives. Just keep clicking load more, load more. Daisy in the Box is down there. You can watch the podcasts. They're actually quite interesting as to what happened there. But that's the scary part of it. It really feels like the Daisy in the Box hoax finally got made to conclusion, only it was with Todd Standing instead.
But there was no promise of proof of that experience. So
no, there was promised groundbreaking new evidence of the Sasquatch creatures for the third type of species, the devil. It was promised groundbreaking footage of the other two that we've never seen before. It was promised.
That was never up there. But when they went up there, they had all these experiences, but none of that was documented, even though they had a film crew.
Right. So the apples got eaten every single time they went, but there are no there's no pictures, there's no videos of what took the apples.
And I understand, that maybe they didn't catch video or pictures of what took the apples, but the documentation process afterwards, and there must be some form of evidence of these large creatures going through the area, at least to and from specific locations, especially when you saw them there. Like that's what would have been interesting to me. Not, like the story is great, the story is this, the story is that. Sometimes a story is just a story and there's nothing to take away from it. So you just tell your story, but you don't expect people to believe you. I don't know if Dr. Meldrum expects anyone to believe him, but there's a lot of people that just do out of hand, and I think that's not fair to the rest of the people who you don't believe because their story is every bit as believable. They just don't have the evidence, just like a lot of people don't.
That's exactly the point that I wanted to make with that. Thank you, Father Batdorf. You, my man, are thinking along the same routes. Well, with that, people, it is time for us to dabble just a little bit.
Oh no, it's those damn men in black again.
Not again.
Edwards, let's put it on.
Put what on?
The last suit you'll ever wear.
Yeah, so apparently there is a big, huge government conspiracy cover-up. Gonna take you to jail if you talk about stuff going on in the background right now. And by God Almighty, y'all know me. Okay, I know everybody. I talk to everybody. I got my fingers in. I can't get nothing. Apparently, there's the big thicket watch. The boys of Bob and his son, the Garretts over there in Texas. They had a podcast for the longest time. Back in 2013, not just 2013, I think it was June of 2013, they posted up this video of this camp that they had found along their ways of Bigfooting, and the camp was all tore up. The fire was kicked around. The tent had a smoldering log on it. The stuff was busted. Looked like a hell of a party to me. I mean, I've been at those parties before. Had to buy people new tents and shit because we just burned everything to the ground. But apparently they were linking this to a Sasquatch attack, and it's kind of grown into this giant story up till now, when all of a sudden, all of the podcasts and the evidence and all of that stuff just kind of disappeared offline. And now, have you been seeing the hints of this stuff around there, Father Batdorf, at all?
I've heard some of the edges of it. I've heard some of a couple of folks, have been talking about this recently, and Honestly, like I don't know a whole lot about this scenario, but it sounds a lot like potentially he's stepped onto an investigation or something that wasn't ongoing but is now. I'm not sure, and there's been a cease and desist order on all of his media pertaining to it. It's crazy.
Well, that's the question. I mean, supposedly there's like alphabet agencies involved, and it's like you don't talk about, first rule about Sasquatch Fight Club is you don't talk about Sasquatch Fight Club. I mean, it's either they've got video of something that nobody wanted to know anything about ever, and now too many people have seen it. Hell, I might be in trouble now because I said I've watched the damn video and know all about it too. Might even have a copy of it around here somewhere. Did I actually say that out loud? Ooh, somebody's gonna come get me now. Come on, I'll give you my address if you want. Just hit me up on Facebook. Seriously, I don't know what's going on, but it seems like a giant grab for attention, maybe, or something.
For me, like, I'm not sure what it is. I know that if there was an altercation, if there was foul play, if there was all sorts of other things involved in this campsite, where it, if it wasn't a party, but if it was something where somebody was really pissed off and they came into this campsite. Maybe is it a jilted lover? Is it a this? Is it that? And then they find a body later, and then they go back through the investigation and realize that was the same site. All that media has to come down.
Right. Now the story that got leaked.
I'm making up.
You're making up the scenario, but let me tell you the scenario that got leaked about the campsite. Now, the guys over there, Wes and Woody and Will and those fellows over there. On their podcast, they've been talking about this with them, and supposedly there's a Mr. Black and a Mr. Agent Pink or something. I don't know. But it was a Sasquatch attack, and there was 3 people camping there. 2 of them got slaughtered. One of them escaped in their vehicle to go get the cops. And through analysis of the videos and things, there were supposedly 2 dead bodies in the trees. Gory bodies in the trees around this campsite video, linked 100% to Bigfoot. I mean, they're saying it was a Bigfoot attack. Bigfoot killed these 2 people and nearly killed the 3rd guy, but he got himself away.
We're back to like all the other folks' stories, where it's a story, and where do I get to sink my teeth into that?
Yeah. Where can I find the obituary of the 2 dead people? The names of the 2 dead people would be nice. People don't just die and just like don't ever get released. I mean, they wait till they notify the last kin, or the last kin has 30 days, and then if they, it's been since July, give us some names of the dead people, please.
Yeah, unless it was a bunch of John Does. Yeah, who knows? Whatever it is, like, it seems like there's, if there's a mystery here, maybe it's not always related to Sasquatch. It could be alien abduction.
Could be chupacabras.
It is down there in Texas, the heart of chupacabra country.
Could be aliens from Roswell coming down to get those guys and giving them alien probes. That's why. So, God help them. Bob, if you're being terrorized by the government and you've got a lawyer and you're still being terrorized by the government, get another lawyer. Because, trust me, a good lawyer can even shut the government down. It's really not all that hard. The government can't seem to cover up potholes on the interstate. So if they're really giving you that hard of a time and they haven't put you in jail, you need another lawyer, because that's the way that works. They talk to your lawyer, they don't talk to you anymore, and then he talks to you. It's this big game and dance. That's how you stay out of jail. So hire you a couple of more lawyers, and you can stay out of jail even longer, because then one lawyer's got to talk to another lawyer who has to talk to another lawyer. Matter of fact, move out of Texas. Then you can make it really complicated, because you can hire 3 lawyers in each state and make them all talk to each other before the government can even think about talking to you. So that would be my advice. Move out of state a couple of times, get like 9 lawyers, lawyer up real good, and figure it all out, because I feel for you, man, because I don't want the CIA or the FBI or Homeland Security coming around me worrying about that kind of mess. I ain't worried about that at all. David, what would you do, man, if really the government was up your creek?
What would I do? I'd probably shut down all the media that they asked me to shut down and said, you know what? Wasn't that big a deal to begin with.
Well, we know who not to tell secrets to then, right, David?
Yeah. Well, bye-bye.
That's right. The Batdorf is going to be the first one to roll over, so don't tell him any secrets unless there's nobody else left alive.
That's right.
Oh, man. Well, this puts us into the part of the show that we like the absolute best, and that is going to be talking about Albert Ostman, kidnapped by Sasquatch, the Albert Ostman incident. Now, I did actually scrub some audio out of a royalty-free piece of video, and let's listen to what Albert himself had to say about his experiences with the Sasquatches in British Columbia.
Prospector Albert Ostman, in 1924, was camped near Toba Inlet in British Columbia. While asleep in a sleeping bag, he was picked up and packed several miles. Daylight found him in a small valley encircled by cliffs. This was home for a family of these creatures. He was able to escape after 6 days by getting them sick on a box of snuff. Now let's listen to Mr. Ostman's experience.
Well, there was 4 of them, and none of them look alike. There was what I call the old man, because I had no scale or any rules for measurement, but he was at least 8 feet tall, and must have at least 800 pounds. But the what I call the old lady, she couldn't have been over, 600-700 pounds. She was probably 7 feet tall, and they were all covered with hair.
And that's what Albert actually had to say about the beasts that picked him up and took him away for some strange reason.
And now, it's time for the Squatchers Lounge Epic Bigfoot Encounters. We'll be taking a closer look at some of the most historical sightings, how they affected our view on this topic, and how they led the community to where they are today.
So Albert Ostman, 1924, gets picked up, carried away by Sasquatch. And basically the story comes down, there were 2 stories in 1924. There was Ape Canyon and there was this one. And we had a hard time kind of distinguishing which one actually came first. Now, regardless of which one came first, this is the one we first decided to talk to you about. Basically, Albert was prospecting up in a canyon, and while he was sleeping and had a bunch of little gear still in his sleeping bag, and most of us woodsmen will tell you we don't always clear out the sleeping bag just because we're laying in it sleeping. I mean, you don't really have to. Gets picked up by a Sasquatch and carried off for mile after mile after mile to get laid into a cave to meet the Sasquatch family. Now, what do you know about the story so far, David?
Well, I know 2 things. Is that this has been around for a really, really long time. This happened, but it wasn't told until 1976.
No, it was actually told. 1957 was when the first story was told.
Okay.
John Green was brought in, and he talked to Albert Ostman in 1957. So between 1924 and 1957, there was no retelling of the story and no recounts of the story before John Green actually got there to interview him.
Yeah. So again, this is a really old story, and it's something that's on your mind when you're out there because you've heard this story, you've heard of maybe a couple others like it, or stuff that makes sense. Oh well, if this is such, then it makes sense. But of that capture story, picking you up in your sleeping bag and carrying you off. I mean, that's some terrifying shit right there. I mean, if anybody is out in the wilderness and has any phobia of anything, it's got to be that. Like, if you think Sasquatch is where you are, that's on your mind. Like, well, what if they
pick me up and carry me away?
Like, well, or even just lay hands on you. I mean, that's the crazy part in your mind where you're like, wow, that could really happen. Well,
Right. Well, as the story goes, Albert was picked up in a sleeping bag and carried off for more than 3 hours, and then he was dropped down on a plateau amongst a family of 4 of the creatures. Albert was kept captive by the Sasquatch. The captors were 3 adults and a child, which held Ostman captive for 6 days. One of the Bigfoot was reported to be 8 feet tall. Ostman did not use his gun on them, as they had done him no harm. He stayed with the Bigfoot family for a week. Ostman ate sweet-tasting grass that they gave him. According to Ostman, the female Sasquatch washed and stacked leaves. Albert escaped by making a large male Sasquatch groggy by feeding him some snuff. Groggy, I'm not sure Wikipedia's got that one quite right. And he did not tell the story for more than 24 years it happened for fear of being thought crazy. As more Sasquatch stories appeared in the press, Albert decided to finally tell his story to the newspaper in 1957. Now, what's important about 1957 is it is pre-Jerry Crew's footprint in Bluff Creek in 1958.
That is clear differentiation. There's Jerry Crew, which we sort of talk about as the birth of the Bluff Creek, California, like, pop culture, version of Sasquatch. British Columbia at the time, probably not a huge pop culture version of Sasquatch. There's some people who talk about it. There's some stories. There's the tribal stories. And then this hits the paper. And, oh, my God, what do you believe?
Right. Well, what's really cool about it is I got a picture here. Bring this up. This is John Green actually visiting Ostman in 57 during his interview. And a very young John Green at the time. Also, notice that John Green is searching for Sasquatch pre-1958 and Jerry Crew. So, that also is an important thing to point out.
Yeah, well, John Green has been on this case since hearing stories of Sasquatch and people saying, like, talking about sightings. He grew up and has lived, and I believe still lives, in that, like, Harrison Hot Springs area. He's moved around since then, but ended up back there, and that's where he, in British Columbia, where he grew the passion for this subject, and spent an entire life, like from a young man. I mean, this is a young man we're looking at here, like a young man to today, still passionate about the subject. Amazing man.
And also another picture of somebody there interviewing him later on. I believe this was later after John. It could have been also in 1957 or 58. I couldn't quite nail down this exact date, but that's a young Renee DeHinden there in town, also interviewing, getting his story from Albert Ostman. And the two notes that compared between the two of them, between Renee DeHinden and John Green later on, actually come out pretty close. The story didn't really change. I mean, minor details were fuzzy on both cases, seemed to be a little clearer on the other, but that happens in old people with their brains. Some days, some details are cleaner than others.
Also, you ask one question 2 different ways, you get 2 different answers depending on how you ask it. I mean, I run interviews for employment all the time, and then I ask the same question sometimes, but different ways, and get different answers.
I know, and I always want to punch people like you in the face for doing that, too. It's really, really irritating. Now, one of the other pieces of evidence that exists for this story is the handwritten affidavit by Albert Ostman himself. It does actually exist. This is a photograph of that handwritten affidavit of the story told by Albert Ostman to John Green. That was also later an affidavit was taken by a sheriff, a deputy sheriff, to make it official as well. In 1957, a man to put his ethics and his credibility on the line to sign an affidavit to say these statements are true, or versus just telling some dude who came down from a couple of provinces away to talk to you that these statements are true, are two totally different things in 1957.
It's a pretty ballsy move. I mean, like either way, because people aren't going to believe you and they're still going to ostracize you. But this is a lumberjack. He was on holiday,
prospecting for gold.
In the Toba Inlet, which I brought that up on a map. I want to show everybody, it says in the statement that brought me to the head of the Toba Inlet, and that's a huge. We'll look at that in a second, but that's an insane place to be. So this guy obviously is already right in there. So if I were to put this up here, and were to look at the Toba Inlet, and to the actual head of the Toba Inlet, here's Vancouver Island. I live down here somewhere, and up in this area, there's a border that goes through here. There's some peaks that are mentioned. There's not even in really logging roads. I mean, there's one that cuts through here. This is not this is real wild country. It's an interesting place for this to have happened at the head of the Toba Inlet, which.
But at the head of the Toba Inlet was where you would be gold prospecting after the winter snowfall has melted, because that's where all the new gold is.
It makes sense that he would be there. Sasquatch in this area, if you imagine here, let's zoom out a little bit more. That Vancouver Island is a hotbed, that the Olympic Peninsula is a hotbed of Washington State, and that there's stories that little rivers that I'm looking around here, but up here this inlet would be kind of a sanctuary. I might, if I were Sasquatch, I'd be up here in this, Stewart thing. But anyway, but this might be a sanctuary in really inhospitable territory. Let's just say that the Harrison Lake area is right up in here. So I mean, this whole area is viable, if nothing else.
Now, what I've got up here over on my screen here is the actual signed affidavit by a Justice of the Peace, and for the province of British Columbia, on the right-hand side is Albert Ostman's actual signature. This is where he says that his solemn declaration is consensually believing it to be true, and knowing it to be the same force and effect as if made under oath, and by the virtue of the Canada Evidence Act. So he's basically swearing this in as evidence in court that this event happened to him. I'm digging the story. I like the idea of, Sasquatch being not bloodthirsty, family-oriented type, primate beings. I don't call them people because I don't really think them people, but then the story kind of takes a little bit of a twist of he kind of got the idea that they wanted him to breed with the youngin.
I would like to know how that idea came about. Is it hand signals?
Right. He kept saying that the young one was so shy she wouldn't even come out from behind the bushes, that all he really ever saw were the eyes and the big brow. So I'm not really sure she wasn't snuggling up with him at night. But in the end, on the 6th day, he just kind of got sick of it, but he didn't want to hurt the creatures, so he had some snuff in his pack. And he had gotten the big male sick on the snuff, and when the other ones were kind of paying attention to him being sick on the snuff out there, he kind of beat feet and ran off and left most of his crap behind, and got, back to his camp, I guess. The story doesn't really clear kind of what happens after he got away before he starts to tell the story again.
Well, yeah, if you're a family group dependent on the alpha or the old man, the old male or whatnot, what have you, maybe we've all put in a dip or done something, and I was a heavy smoker at the time I did that. I put it in a dip, and I was like, I spit it out before I vomited all over the place. Became violently ill, right? You know, if you're not used to that and you put in a little bit too much, you're not sure what to do with it. It's like, wow, that's crazy. But if you ate a whole box or pouch of snuff, you'd probably become violently ill. If the family was concerned about that, they probably wouldn't even have chased Ostman as he ran away. They would have thought, oh, you've killed our protection.
We'll kill Papa. Oh no, we run away from you.
Yeah, or I mean, the whole like empathy and compassion thing happens within the primate family, so we could imagine that but that's what you have to do. This is a hotly debated sighting. There's some people who are like notably like pro, like Sasquatch exists, that are like this is total garbage. And there's
right,
but how could it be garbage if then sort of a thing.
Right. One of the points people like to make about this is some of the things that he says about the Sasquatch in interviews and subsequent things. One of the quotes was saying that after many years of studying the Ostman account, researchers have discovered that there are at least a couple of things that don't totally add up. Also, Ostman liked to write little novels, however, that he would state things about the Sasquatch that were totally unknown prior to 1957 and found out to be essentially correct as a result of subsequent research with other sightings is highly coincidental. So, it's like the Ostman pad, the foot pad that we see on the Patterson creature. They referred to it as an Ostman's pad, as the gray, heavy, fatted pad, almost like a bear would have on the bottom of the hands and feet, because it's a different texture than what the regular skin would be.
Here's my a couple. I always like to split my opinion two ways. Would a lumberjack living in the northern part of British Columbia, who on holiday prospects for gold, know about primate morphology enough to concoct in his story, like the original story, of a fatty pad on the bottom of a foot? And
that's a big stretch.
That's a big stretch. So also a big stretch is the whole rest of the story, where the beings were mumbling within themselves and trying to convince him to copulate with their daughter, right? This story is divisive in that way. Like, how could this guy come up with so many things that are have become culturally accepted about the Sasquatch enigma and the morphology of the Sasquatch, not just from him, but from other people and from people who never knew about the story? Because I'm pretty sure that the Ostman story didn't hit, in Southern or Northern California during the Jerry Crew time. That was something totally different.
Right, it would have probably been a story newly told to John Green, brought with him when he was down here investigating from 58 to 64 as well. So it kind of got told, there's this guy Ostman I just talked to in 24 says, that he was kidnapped by a family of these things.
So we'll split it a third way. Is just a whole game of telephone of the early greats about this story, that story, the other story, and then we all kind of take that as the gospel and go with it. But it's hard to imagine that that's totally the case, because how could you keep it straight for so many years?
Right. That totally becomes the question. That story is one that's out there. It's it's unbelievable because it's never happened again. I mean, we don't really have any stories of people being taken off to meet the rest of the Sasquatch family, but how many of them didn't make it back?
How many of them got taken to where they didn't know where they were and got lost or fell down? Or one of the things we didn't bring up on our last episode with the Monday Baroon, people were so frightened of the Monday Baroon they were jumping off of fifth-story floors on buildings.
Right. Yeah, they weren't just chasing shadows.
To their death. So how many people didn't make it back? But we also have stories of this happening from the surrounding area, from where the Ostman story comes from. And we're talking about all these cultural, like, okay, did the skunk ape steal, people? Well, I don't know, but the ones up here do. If you go with all the stories, and if you go with the Ostman story, do they now? Yeah, not so much. Probably because their mind speaking to the ones in the Midwest, going, "Don't do it. We did that. It didn't turn out well for us."
That's right. Well, guys, as we're doing this year on the podcast, we're giving a big thumbs up or a big thumbs down on the story. For me and myself, I would like to give it a thumbs up, but in all actuality, I really kind of got to give this one a thumbs down. It really is too unbelievable that he got to be pulled down to the family of Sasquatches and didn't get ripped limb from limb, and they weren't there to breed with him. I'm sorry. I gotta keep myself on this one. I think it was a total hoax. If I'm not mistaken, I do believe the Ape Canyon story came out first, and this may have just been his attempt to fabricate an even bigger story than what that one actually was. David, what do you think, buddy?
I think that the stories that are this specific and this, sometimes when they're so epic that they're non-believable, I do my thumbs down. There's a lot of things that make me believe that Albert Ostman is smarter than we think he is, and just has pulled this story off for years, and to a lot of people who were just collecting and telling those stories at the time.
I think that's where we're at, too. I think it was just a matter of a bigger and badder story than anything before, and just like Dr. Meldrum's sighting, there's absolutely no proof of it either.
And there wasn't going to be, and even if you had it in a, do they have plastics back there on the West Coast? Probably not at that time. But if it was kept in a wood box somewhere, probably wouldn't have enough DNA for us to go on.
Nope, not anymore. Okay, it's at that time of the podcast, guys. It's time to go squatching with our old pal Wes.
Rules to squatching with your old pal Wes. Today's rule, number 23. Ask around. You got a Bigfoot report you want to investigate? Go around town. You'll never know what you're going to find out. Locals are always super friendly, and they love to answer questions about Bigfoot. I promise. Why would I lie? Go to the town of Willow Creek. There's a little bookstore down there. That guy will answer a question about anything. He loves it. All right, guys, thanks. Hey, if you want to catch up with my artwork, go to weslosner.com. I got paintings there for sale, or come get tattooed by me at Good Neighbor Tattoo in Escondido, California. Thanks, everyone. Stay squatchy, my friends.
I love Wes. He's our buddy down there in San Diego. We're going to close it out with this week. And I've been saving it this entire time. There is one thing that David and I have to say.
Victory is mine!
That's right. Rick Dyer can kiss my ass. He's no longer invited to the Skunk Ape Convention in Florida in March. Just like I told you people was going to happen. It happened. It was released. And what did I do? I didn't do nothing. I just alerted people. I just told people what was going on, and y'all responded. And I have to say thank you. Anybody that gives Rick Dyer a second to make money on Bigfoot should be shunned and shoved out of the community as fast as we can shove them there. And what did they do? They replaced them with Todd Tiss Hotel. Hallelujah! That's going to be an awesome show for you people down in Florida. What are you thinking, David?
I went from wanting to smash this show into 1,000 pieces to now wanting to go. Good job. You picked the right person versus the wrong person. And, there might be things going on right now that involve that wrong person. If it's not...
It's shock value. It's crappy shock value. And all it was shock value to put the money in Stacey Brown's pocket. That's what the suck part about it was. And he didn't want it to get out until he sold enough tickets to cover the other people that he had already promised that he was going to fly into the conference. I don't give a flying crap, dude. You're going to act like a douchebag. We're going to treat you like a douchebag. What do you think, man? Douchebag, exactly.
I think that, yeah, the whole situation has gotten way out of control, and people need to stop bringing up Rick Dyer. We're going to bring up Rick Dyer at the behest of other people bringing up Rick Dyer. Like, if somebody else brings up Rick Dyer, we're going to bring him up. We're going to talk about all the things that are wrong with that scenario, and that's it. We're not making this stuff up, people.
No, absolutely not.
When we're talking about Rick Dyer, we're not making this up. This is happening, and that's part of the news, and that's part of what we want to do on this. Like, we're trying to bring things back into. Let's look at the old stuff. Let's look at the new stuff. Let's look at the real stuff.
The real stuff.
But let's also look at the shit and get it out.
Call it what it is. That's right. That's right. The Squatchers Lounge podcast, pointing out shit where it goes. I mean, rooting out shit where it exists. I don't know. We're gonna get rid of the shit. That's all I can tell you. I am sick to death of the crap of these people just shoving it down our throats, shoving it down. Take this. We're gonna do this because we can. We don't care about you people. Well, you know what? You people are the ones that are in control of the money, so you do care about those people. And we proved it this week by telling you Rick Dyer shouldn't be at any conference ever to make a penny off of Bigfoot. Victory is ours. With that, David, buddy, exactly, man. I say toast to that. And we're out of here, man. Time's up already. Jeez, second podcast already in the box. With that, I want to thank the Father David Batdorf for hanging out with me tonight. I am the Reverend Jeff Kelly. This is the Squatchers Lounge Podcast Season 3, Episode 2. Thanks for watching, and may the Squatch be with you. God, I was so happy when I heard this hotel, no Dyer. Heck, we were fishing, man. We didn't have a single one. Not a single signal. Didn't care. No fucks given.
You know, really, no fucks given once the announcement was made. Hey, now it's funny.
Oh my God! One of these days they'll learn.
No, they won't.
No, but we'll be here to point it out when they don't.
Ah.
Good night, everybody. See you next week.